Most conversations about the Model Y Juniper 2026 stop at surface-level updates. A tweak here, a refresh there, maybe a line about range or comfort. But that framing misses the real question. What actually changes when you own this car for 5, 7, or 10 years? How do these updates quietly reshape maintenance costs, depreciation, repair cycles, and even resale value over time? This video isn't about hype or first impressions. It's about consequences. Every design decision, manufacturing tweak, and feature adjustment on the 2026 Model Y Juniper feeds into a long-term ownership equation most reviews never finish solving. By the end, you should have a much clearer sense of whether Juniper is simply a facelift or a structural shift in how Tesla wants owners to live with this car. Before we get into it, a quick reminder to subscribe and turn on notifications. It genuinely helps AutoGear Shift push beyond that strangely specific 23,456 subscriber plateau. What follows is our most comprehensive breakdown of the Model Y Juniper to date. Some elements may sound familiar on their own, but the focus here is on what those changes mean when you connect them together. Stick with it. The full picture only really locks into place at the end.
One is to caution against complacency.
And that is the real trap with the Model Y Juniper. It feels so easy and smooth that many new owners assume they are using it correctly, until charging, range, and a few hidden settings start catching them off guard. Charging is not like filling up with gas, range is not a fixed number, and the best features are not obvious because they live in software and small daily habits. So in this video, I am breaking down 11 essential Model Y Juniper tips and tricks that protect your battery, cut range anxiety, save time, and make daily driving smoother. Why do most Model Y Juniper owners get range wrong at the start? And what should they focus on instead? The biggest reason many new Tesla Model Y Juniper owners misunderstand range is that they look at the car like a gas vehicle with a distance gauge, while in reality, Tesla behaves more like a mobile energy management device. Your daily experience is not determined by how many kilometers the car can drive, but by how intelligently you consume and preserve energy. When you change this perspective, range anxiety drops very quickly, and using the Tesla Model Y Juniper becomes noticeably more relaxed. The first thing you should do is stop trusting the displayed kilometer number absolutely, and switch to tracking energy by battery percentage. The range number on the screen is only a projection based on consumption models under ideal conditions. In real life, efficiency constantly changes with speed, wind, terrain, battery temperature, and how you accelerate. From a physics standpoint, aerodynamic drag increases rapidly as speed rises, so even driving just a bit faster on the highway can significantly change consumption. Real-world tests show that at around 75 miles per hour and above, it is very difficult to achieve the rated range under standard conditions. With the Tesla Model Y Juniper, the quiet cabin and stable body also make it easy to drive faster than intended, without realizing it. Fleet data from Geotab shows that speed often impacts range more strongly than summer temperatures, and simply reducing speed by about 10 to 15 miles per hour can improve range by roughly 20 to 30% depending on conditions. That is why tracking battery percentage is the simplest way to see your remaining energy consistently, instead of watching a kilometer number that keeps fluctuating. The second thing you should do is treat 80% as your daily charging level, instead of trying to charge to full every time. The Tesla Model Y Juniper is not designed for you to charge to 100% and then let the car sit for long periods. Lithium-ion batteries experience the most stress at high states of charge, because higher cell voltage accelerates aging reactions. Battery research consistently shows that limiting the charge window helps extend battery lifespan, even if you give up some usable capacity. Tesla understands this, which is why the car screen and the app clearly separate daily charging limits from charging for long trips. In real-world use, 80% is an easy level to live with, sufficient for daily driving needs, and much healthier for long-term battery stability. The key principle is understanding that charging to 100% is not a problem if you use it right away, but leaving the battery at that level for too long is what should be avoided, especially when the car is parked for hours in hot conditions. The third thing you should do is always leave an energy buffer instead of trying to arrive with an almost empty battery. Planning to arrive with 0 to 5% battery may sound optimal, but it ignores real-world uncertainty. A headwind, extended traffic, a hilly route, or simply driving a few kilometers per hour faster than planned can all throw off the original estimate. With the Tesla Model Y Juniper, keeping about 10 to 15% battery when you arrive is a very reasonable buffer. It does not add much charging time, but makes the driving experience far more comfortable. When navigation is on, the car always shows the projected battery percentage at arrival, and simply watching that number is enough to adjust your trip. This buffer also helps avoid small surprises, because even when the car is not moving, the battery can still drain slightly to support electronic systems under certain conditions. And those are the first 3 tips every Model Y Juniper owner should know. How should a Model Y Juniper owner build the right charging routine from day one? Here are tips 4, 5, and 6, focusing on how Tesla Model Y Juniper actually wants you to charge every day. The most common mistake new Tesla Model Y Juniper owners make is treating charging like refueling a gas car. You wait until the battery is low, then you go charge, and once you do, you try to fill it completely for peace of mind. Tesla is designed around the exact opposite logic. Charging is not an occasional event, but a repeated habit tied to your daily rhythm. When you build this habit correctly from the start, everything from battery health to time management to driving experience becomes more predictable and less stressful. The first thing to do is treat home charging as the foundation of the entire experience. The Tesla Model Y Juniper is designed with the assumption that most energy will be added while the car is parked, not while it is driving. Home AC charging, especially level 2 with a 240-volt supply, delivers about 25 to 44 miles per hour, which is enough to recover an entire day's driving overnight. More importantly, moderate and steady charging helps the battery maintain stable temperatures, reduces electrochemical stress, and slows aging. When plugging in becomes a habit as soon as you get home, the Tesla Model Y Juniper starts to feel more like a phone than a gas car. Every morning, the battery is ready, and you no longer have to plan charging stops. Next, it is crucial to understand the proper role of the supercharger. Superchargers are not designed to replace home charging, but to keep you moving on long trips. Technically, DC fast charging pushes a very large amount of power into the battery in a short time, but lithium-ion batteries cannot sustain that rate as state of charge rises. As the battery approaches full, the system must reduce current to control temperature and protect the battery. This is why charging from 0 to around 80% is very fast, while the final 20% takes much longer. With the Tesla Model Y Juniper, the most efficient approach on road trips is to charge just enough to continue driving, then get back on the road instead of stopping for a long time to fill the battery completely in one session. Once you accept this logic, total trip time is often shorter, and the battery is used in line with its physical characteristics. Finally, to keep everything running smoothly, let navigation handle the hardest work for you. Many people think of the Tesla Model Y Juniper navigation system as just a map, but in reality, it is the energy management brain for the entire trip. When you enter a destination, the car does not just calculate a route. It predicts energy consumption, decides whether charging stops are needed, and prepares the battery before arriving at a supercharger through preconditioning. A battery at the optimal temperature charges faster, which means less waiting. Navigation also shows projected battery percentage at arrival and avoids overcrowded stations using real-time data. By simply forming the habit of always using navigation, even on familiar routes, you let the Tesla Model Y Juniper automatically handle the most complex charging-related decisions. Which software habits in a Model Y Juniper actually change your day-to-day experience the most? The biggest difference between the Tesla Model Y Juniper and a traditional car is not the motor or the battery, but the way software quietly orchestrates everything in the background. Many good or bad daily experiences do not come from hardware, but from whether you build the right software habits. When you change just a few small habits, the car starts working the right way with almost no extra effort from you. The first habit that makes a clear difference is treating preconditioning as battery care, not just comfort. Many people only preheat or pre-cool the cabin for comfort, but with the Tesla Model Y Juniper, the greatest value of preconditioning is the battery. Lithium-ion batteries operate most efficiently within a specific temperature range. When the battery is too cold, the car must use energy to warm it before allowing fast charging or high power output. This is why many people notice slower fast charging in winter, even at the same charging station. When you turn on climate control from the app a few minutes before driving, or simply navigate to a supercharger so the car automatically preconditions, the Tesla Model Y Juniper is bringing the battery into its optimal state before you actually need energy. The result is faster charging, more stable performance, and less wasted energy in the first minutes of driving. The second habit is using the Tesla app as a daily control center, not just a digital key. The Tesla Model Y Juniper is designed with the assumption that users will interact with the car frequently through the app. When you monitor battery level, manage charging, start climate remotely, or check on the car while it is parked, you are proactively managing energy instead of reacting when issues appear. A very practical example is cooling or heating the cabin before getting in. This not only improves comfort, but also reduces battery strain at the start of the drive, because the system does not need to draw a large burst of power all at once. When the app becomes part of your daily routine, the Tesla Model Y Juniper runs more smoothly, like a smart device managed remotely rather than a car you only interact with when sitting behind the wheel. Of course, alongside this habit, carrying a backup keycard remains a basic safety practice to avoid unexpected situations. The third habit is using Sentry Mode selectively, instead of leaving it on by default. Sentry Mode clearly shows how software directly affects battery usage. When enabled, cameras and sensors remain active, meaning the battery continues to drain even while the car is parked. Real-world experience shows that Sentry Mode can consume around 5 to 15% battery per day, depending on environment and activity. With the Tesla Model Y Juniper, the quiet and low-profile design often means maximum monitoring is not always necessary. When you treat Sentry Mode as a strategic choice, only enabling it in busy or unfamiliar areas, you avoid the feeling of mysterious battery drain and maintain better energy control. This is when software truly works for you instead of silently taking away range without you noticing. And those are tips 7, 8, and 9 for the Tesla Model Y Juniper: using preconditioning at the right time, using the app correctly, and enabling Sentry Mode selectively to make daily ownership easier. These are the final 2 tips that help the Tesla Model Y Juniper feel easier to drive and keep the battery more stable every day. Once you are familiar with how the Tesla Model Y Juniper manages energy and software, the biggest daily differences come from very small adjustments in how you drive and how you use comfort features. These are not immediately impressive changes, but after a few weeks, you will notice the Juniper feels smoother, more relaxed, and noticeably more battery stable. For driving feel, the most valuable adjustment is practicing smooth one-pedal driving rather than abrupt lift-off habits. On the Tesla Model Y Juniper, every time you release the accelerator, the car slows down while recovering kinetic energy and feeding it back into the battery. In city driving, where acceleration and deceleration happen constantly, studies show regenerative braking can recover about 10 to 30% of total energy consumption, depending on traffic, terrain, and how smoothly you lift off. Instead of releasing the pedal abruptly, simply lift a moment earlier and more gradually. The car will slow smoothly, passengers will not lurch forward, and you will rely less on the brake pedal. Over time, you naturally brake less, mechanical brakes work more lightly, and driving in traffic becomes less tiring without consciously trying to drive efficiently. The final factor that makes a major difference in daily driving is how you manage climate and heating. With the Tesla Model Y Juniper, HVAC is one of the most significant contributors to battery usage, especially in cold weather. 8AA testing has shown that at 20 degrees Fahrenheit, cold temperatures alone can reduce range by about 12%, and when cabin heating is used, the average reduction can reach up to 41%. The solution is not to turn off heating to save battery, but to heat intelligently so you stay comfortable with less range fluctuation. You should prioritize warming your body first by using heated seats and the heated steering wheel before raising cabin temperature if needed, because cabin heating can draw around 4,800 watts, while light seat heating uses about 500 watts. A few minutes before heading out, start the climate from the app so the cabin reaches temperature in advance. This prevents the car from drawing heavy HVAC power right as you begin driving. Leave climate control in auto mode to let the Tesla Model Y Juniper balance comfort and energy consumption on its own. Which one of these tips will you start using immediately? Let me know by commenting below. If one of these tips changed the way you see your Model Y Juniper, let me know which one in the comments. Subscribe to Auto Gear Shift, and I will see you in the next deep dive. For years, owning a car has quietly become one of the most expensive subscriptions in American life, especially for seniors living on fixed or semi-fixed income. Monthly payments, rising insurance premiums, unpredictable repair bills, and fuel costs don't show up all at once, but over time, they drain financial stability. Now, Tesla is signaling that the 2026 Model Y Juniper refresh may not just be about design or performance. It may be about fundamentally changing how much a car costs to own, year after year. So what exactly is Tesla changing with Model Y Juniper 2026? Can a redesigned electric SUV realistically reduce monthly car bills for seniors? Not in theory, but in everyday use? And how does this compare to gasoline SUVs and even other EVs on the road today? That's what we're breaking down. How is Tesla rebuilding the Model Y around cost control, not just design? The current Model Y already holds one of the lowest total cost of ownership figures in the mid-size SUV segment. In the US market, a gasoline SUV in the same size class typically burns through around 600 to 700 gallons of fuel per year. At an average fuel price of about $3.60 per gallon, that's roughly $2,200 to $2,500 annually, before oil changes, transmission servicing, exhaust repairs, or emissions-related failures. By contrast, a Model Y driven the same distance consumes roughly 3,500 to 4,000 kilowatt-hours of electricity per year. Even at a residential rate of 15 cents per kilowatt-hour, that comes out to about $525 to $600 annually. Tesla already erased a major operating cost with electrification. But Juniper appears focused on cutting costs that EVs don't automatically eliminate: insurance, maintenance variability, and depreciation risk. One of the quiet shifts expected with Model Y Juniper 2026 is deeper integration of Tesla's next-generation manufacturing processes. These include expanded use of large structural castings and simplified wiring architectures. While this sounds like factory talk, it directly impacts owners. Fewer parts mean fewer failure points. A simplified wiring system reduces the likelihood of electrical gremlins that often drive up diagnostic costs in modern vehicles, especially as they age past warranty. For seniors, this matters more than performance specs. Repair unpredictability is one of the biggest stressors in vehicle ownership after retirement. A $1,200 surprise repair doesn't just hurt financially, it disrupts planning. Tesla's direction with Juniper suggests an attempt to make the Model Y more appliance-like. Fewer service visits, fewer what went wrong moments, and longer stretches of trouble-free driving. Another major cost lever is braking. Regenerative braking already allows Tesla owners to drive 100,000 miles or more on original brake pads. with Juniper expected to further optimize software-controlled region behavior, especially at low speeds. Brake wear could be reduced even further. Traditional SUVs often require brake service every 30,000 to 40,000 miles, with typical costs ranging from $400 to $700 per axle. Over a decade of ownership, that alone can exceed $2,000. Insurance is where many seniors currently feel EV pain, not fuel or maintenance. Tesla is expected to continue refining its insurance model alongside Juniper, leveraging vehicle telemetry and driver behavior rather than demographic assumptions. For older drivers with calm driving patterns, this could slowly shift premiums downward over time. While not guaranteed, the direction is clear. Reward predictability, not age brackets. Then there's depreciation, the silent killer of car budgets. Gasoline SUVs face increasing uncertainty as emissions regulations tighten and resale demand shifts. Tesla, on the other hand, is building Juniper around software longevity. Over-the-air updates extend functionality without dealership visits, preserving perceived value even as the vehicle ages. A car that still feels current 5 or 7 years later holds value better than one frozen in time. What does the monthly cost really look like for seniors driving a Model Y Juniper 2026? Start with the vehicle payment itself. Based on current pricing trends and Tesla's cost reductions, analysts expect the Model Y Juniper 2026 to enter the U.S. market in a range between $44,000 and $47,000 before incentives. With the federal EV credit still structured around North American assembly and battery sourcing, many buyers could see an effective price closer to $36,500 to $39,500. For seniors making a modest down payment and financing over 60 months at prevailing rates, that translates into a monthly payment, roughly between $550 and $620. That figure alone already competes with gasoline SUVs that often appear cheaper up front. A Toyota RAV4 or Honda CR-V typically starts in the low $30,000 range, but once financing, dealer markups, and long-term fuel costs are factored in, the monthly reality changes. Fuel alone adds roughly $180 to $210 per month for the average driver. Over 5 years, that becomes more than $10,000, a cost that never builds equity and never goes away. With Model Y Juniper, energy cost replaces fuel. Assuming 1,000 miles per month, a realistic figure for many retirees, electricity consumption would land around 300 to 330 kilowatt hours. At a residential electricity rate of 15 cents per kilowatt hour, that's roughly $45 to $50 per month. Even in higher-cost states at 20 cents per kilowatt hour, the monthly energy bill remains under $70. That difference alone frees up over $100 per month compared to gasoline, enough to offset insurance or charging equipment costs. Insurance is where skepticism often emerges, especially among older drivers. Tesla insurance has historically been volatile, but the Juniper generation may quietly benefit from Tesla's evolving risk models. Seniors typically drive fewer miles, accelerate less aggressively, and avoid late-night driving, behaviors that Tesla's telemetry systems can measure. Over time, that can lead to premiums stabilizing rather than climbing. While a traditional SUV might cost $140 to $180 per month to insure, early estimates suggest a calm driving Model Y owner could see premiums settle closer to $120 to $150, depending on state regulations. Maintenance is where Juniper truly begins to feel different. Traditional SUVs require oil changes every 5,000 to 7,500 miles, transmission servicing, spark plugs, belts, and emission components. Even conservative owners spend around $1,200 to $1,500 per year on routine maintenance alone once a vehicle passes its warranty period. The Model Y eliminates nearly all of that. There is no oil, no transmission fluid, no exhaust system, and far fewer wearable parts. Tesla estimates annual maintenance for Model Y at roughly $300 to $400, largely consisting of tire rotations, cabin filters, and brake fluid checks. For seniors who keep vehicles long-term, that difference compounds. Over 10 years, a gasoline SUV can quietly absorb $12,000 to $15,000 in maintenance. A Model Y Juniper is likely to stay closer to $3,500 to $4,000 over the same period. Then there's the cost that doesn't appear on invoices. Time. Seniors value predictability. Fewer dealership visits mean fewer disruptions. Over-the-air software updates replace service appointments. Diagnostics often happen remotely. For many older drivers, that convenience translates directly into peace of mind, a benefit that doesn't show up in spreadsheets but matters deeply. How can Model Y Juniper 2026 actually reduce long-term risk for seniors who keep cars 8 to 12 years? For many senior drivers, the real question isn't how much a car costs in the first 3 years. It's what happens after year 6, 7, or 10. When warranties expire, resale value becomes uncertain, and repair bills start to feel unpredictable. This is where Model Y Juniper 2026 could quietly change the equation. Battery longevity is often the first concern. Tesla's current battery packs are already showing strong real-world durability. Data from high-mileage Model 3 and Model Y vehicles indicates average capacity loss of about 10 to 12 miles of range after 200,000 miles of driving. For seniors driving 8,000 to 10,000 miles per year, that mileage threshold could take 2 decades to reach. In practical terms, a Juniper battery used primarily for local and regional driving may never experience meaningful degradation within the owner's lifetime of the vehicle. Juniper is expected to benefit from incremental improvements in battery chemistry and thermal management, even if it does not move to full solid-state technology. Better heat distribution and refined charging curves reduce stress on cells, particularly during daily home charging. For seniors who primarily charge overnight at level 2 speeds, battery wear remains minimal. That reduces the likelihood of the single most feared EV expense: out-of-warranty battery replacement. But even here, the numbers matter. A full battery replacement is expensive, often cited between $10,000 and $15,000 today. Yet those figures are misleading without context. Battery failures within the 8-year or 120,000-mile warranty window are rare, and costs continue to decline as Tesla scales production. By the time a Juniper reaches the end of its useful life, replacement pricing is likely lower than today's figures. More importantly, most senior owners will never face that scenario at all. Mechanical risk is where Juniper may outperform traditional vehicles by a wide margin. Gasoline SUVs accumulate complexity over time. Engines wear, transmissions age, emission systems clog, turbochargers fail. Each repair is manageable on its own, but collectively, they introduce uncertainty. EVs like the Model Y simply have fewer moving parts that degrade with age. The motor, inverter, and drivetrain components are sealed and designed for long-term use. Real-world data shows many Tesla drive units exceeding 300,000 miles with minimal intervention. Tesla's shift toward larger structural castings in Juniper also plays a role here. Fewer welded components mean fewer potential fatigue points. That matters for vehicles kept long-term, especially in climates with temperature swings or rough road conditions. Structural simplicity often translates into longevity. Resale value is another overlooked factor for seniors. Many plan to keep a vehicle for as long as possible, but circumstances change. Health, mobility, or family needs can require selling a car later than expected. A vehicle that holds value offers flexibility. Historically, Tesla vehicles have retained resale value better than comparable gasoline SUVs, partly due to demand and partly due to software updates that keep the vehicle feeling modern. Juniper extends that advantage. Tesla's software-first approach means features can improve over time rather than degrade. Infotainment, driver assistance, energy efficiency, and safety features continue to evolve through updates. For a senior owner, that means a car purchased in 2026 may still feel relevant in 2034. That relevance translates directly into resale demand. Finally, there's regulatory risk. Gasoline vehicles face an uncertain future in many regions due to emissions rules and urban restrictions. Seniors don't want to worry about whether their vehicle will be penalized, taxed, or limited in 5 or 10 years. An electric SUV like the Model Y Juniper sidesteps that uncertainty entirely, offering long-term compliance by design. So would you rather keep paying rising fuel, maintenance, and repair bills, or lock in a vehicle where most costs are known up front? Let us know what you think in the comments by typing yes or no.
And we're continuously improving the design, so each one is better than the last.
Tesla does not wait until launching a completely new vehicle to change everything. Instead, it improves small details step by step, focusing on what you actually feel in daily use, making the driving experience increasingly more comfortable, easier, and safer. How did the Model Y Juniper make the cabin quieter and long trips less tiring? On the Tesla Model Y Juniper, the feeling of being less fatigued on long drives does not come from a single eye-catching feature. It comes from Tesla systematically addressing the 3 biggest sources of discomfort in an electric vehicle: wind noise entering the cabin, mechanical vibrations transmitted from the road through the floor, and road noise resonating inside hollow body cavities. When all 3 are reduced at the same time, the cabin does not just become quieter. More importantly, drivers can stay behind the wheel longer while feeling mentally lighter, with less muscle tension and less need to brace themselves. To reduce wind noise at the source, Tesla improved both the glass and door sealing system on the Model Y Juniper. At speeds between 60 and 75 miles per hour, the most unpleasant wind noise usually forms around the A-pillar, window edges, and door frames, then enters the cabin through microscopic gaps. To address this, Model Y Juniper uses multi-layer acoustic glass with a TPU polymer layer sandwiched between 2 sheets of glass. This polymer layer absorbs sound energy, reducing high-frequency wind noise before it reaches the cabin. At the same time, the door seals were redesigned with multiple layers and more evenly distributed compression around the frame, improving air tightness and limiting turbulent airflow that causes whistling. Tesla states that cabin wind noise is reduced by around 20% compared to the previous generation. This is significant because high-frequency wind noise is one of the fastest contributors to driver fatigue, even when overall noise levels are not particularly high. However, silence alone is not enough to reduce fatigue. Much of the discomfort on long drives comes from continuous micro-vibrations transmitted from the road into the vehicle floor. This is why the next improvement on the Model Y Juniper focuses on the subframe and bushings, which determine whether vibrations are absorbed or passed directly into the cabin. When a wheel hits a pothole, expansion joint, or rough surface, vibrations travel from the suspension into the subframe and then into the body. On the Model Y Juniper, these connection points were retuned using vibration-isolating rubber bushings with both elastic and damping properties. This means they not only flex but also dissipate vibrational energy instead of transmitting it directly. More importantly, the bushings were optimized for controlled compliance. They remain firm enough during slow movements to maintain stability during lane changes, while effectively absorbing rapid road vibrations to reduce floor harshness. According to aggregated technical evaluations of the new Model Y, impact noise is reduced by about 20%, and vibration on poor road surfaces is reduced by up to around 51%. In real-world terms, this usually translates to less vibration reaching your back and legs, which helps reduce muscle fatigue during long drives. Once wind noise is reduced and vibrations are filtered along the mechanical path, the remaining factor affecting cabin comfort lies in how sound behaves inside the vehicle. Tesla therefore continued refining the hollow cavities inside the Model Y Juniper cabin, such as pillars, the dashboard, and wheel wells. where mid- and high-frequency sounds easily resonate and create a droning or whistling sensation. Tesla added and adjusted open-cell acoustic foam in these areas. This material absorbs sound by allowing air to pass through its porous structure and converting acoustic energy into a small amount of heat, thereby reducing reflections and resonance. Lightweight non-woven filler materials were also added in enclosed areas to suppress steady road roar from tires and pavement. Tesla reports that road noise is reduced by about 22%. This type of background noise is most noticeable during freeway driving and is also the kind that forces the brain to constantly filter sound if the cabin is not well treated. On long drives, which improvement would you feel the most? Comment quieter for less wind noise, smoother for fewer vibrations, or calmer for reduced road noise. Can the Model Y Juniper be both more comfortable in the city and more stable at high speed? On the Tesla Model Y Juniper, the balance between urban comfort and high-speed stability comes from clearly separating two driving conditions and tuning the suspension specifically for each. On one hand, the car must absorb vibrations and potholes during city driving. On the other hand, at high speeds or during freeway lane changes, the body must remain stable with precise steering response and minimal lateral movement. This overall approach allows the Model Y Juniper to deliver a more comfortable ride and handling than the previous Model Y, thanks to optimized chassis behavior and wheel control. The biggest difference comes from how Tesla retuned the dampers on the Model Y Juniper. Instead of simply making them stiffer or softer overall, Tesla adjusted the damping characteristics across different ranges of motion. During slow body movements, such as cornering or lane changes, the suspension maintains enough control to prevent excessive body roll. In contrast, when the wheels encounter rapid inputs like patched asphalt, concrete joints, or speed bumps, the suspension absorbs impacts to prevent harsh jolts from reaching the seats. Tesla refers to this as new chassis hardware on the Model Y Juniper. According to aggregated sources from the Chinese market, this suspension retuning reduces vibration on poor road surfaces by up to about 51% compared to the older Model Y. This is crucial because high-frequency vibration is what tires drivers most during city driving, not the occasional large bump. With vibration well controlled by the dampers, the next step in improving high-speed stability lies in suspension geometry and wheel alignment. On the Model Y Juniper, Tesla retuned camber and toe based on real-world load conditions, ensuring that when the car experiences lateral forces at high speed, the tire contact patch remains effective. This reduces the feeling of the car being unsettled or requiring constant steering corrections during freeway lane changes. At lower speeds in daily use, optimized wheel geometry also helps tires wear more evenly, particularly reducing uneven shoulder wear during frequent city driving. This is a very practical improvement because it directly affects tire replacement costs, something users notice more than any marketing specification. Finally, to reduce harsh impacts when crossing speed bumps, Tesla optimized the first layer of damping on the Model Y Juniper, the tires themselves. For a heavy electric SUV like the Model Y, tires play a major role in impact harshness. Tesla does not leave this to guesswork. The owner's manual and door pillar label clearly specify that tire pressure must be maintained according to vehicle configuration. For common setups with 19 or 20-inch wheels, the recommended cold tire pressure is 42 pounds per square inch. When maintained correctly, the tire sidewalls operate within their intended range, soft enough to absorb small impacts, yet firm enough to avoid floatiness at high speed. Proper coordination between tires, wheels, and pressure allows the Model Y Juniper to reduce sharp impacts in the city without sacrificing high-speed stability. Do you think the Model Y Juniper finally strikes the right balance between city comfort and high-speed stability? Comment Model Y Juniper if you think Tesla got it right. How does the Model Y Juniper become easier to use every day? The Model Y Juniper reduces small but repetitive stresses during daily use, making the car easier to live with over time. These are stresses you may not notice during a short test drive, but they become very apparent after an hour behind the wheel, several consecutive workdays, or a long trip. Tesla addresses this through three closely connected changes: how your body is supported by the seats, how you reach and interact with the cabin, and how air is managed around you throughout the journey. Starting with the most fundamental element, seating posture, Tesla adjusted the seat structure and foam materials on the Model Y Juniper, rather than just the surface or appearance. The seats use multi-density molded polyurethane foam, with different firmness levels for different load zones. Thigh and hip support areas use lower density foam, around 40 to 55 kilograms per cubic meter, allowing more deformation to reduce pressure on blood vessels during long periods of sitting. In contrast, the lower and mid-back areas use higher density foam, around 65 to 85 kilograms per cubic meter, to keep the spine stable and prevent a slouched feeling over time. Along with material changes, the seat frame angles and support points were also adjusted to distribute body weight more evenly across the contact surface. In ergonomics, reducing peak contact pressure by just 10 to 15% can extend comfortable sitting time by dozens of minutes. This is why many Model Y Juniper drivers can sit continuously for 90 to 120 minutes before feeling fatigue, compared to around 1 hour in many earlier electric SUVs. Once seating posture is stable and the body no longer needs constant micro-adjustments, Tesla next focused on how the driver interacts with the surrounding space. In the Model Y Juniper, the interior was not made more complex, but reorganized according to clear ergonomic principles. Frequently used controls are placed within the natural reach zone. Elements such as door handles, center console storage, wireless charging pads, and connection ports are positioned within a radius of about 350 to 450 millimeters from the driver's shoulder, and at a height of about 150 to 300 millimeters above the seat surface. This means that when placing or retrieving a phone, the hand only moves about 30 to 40 centimeters, and the eyes do not leave the road for more than half a second to 1 second. Compared to layouts that require the driver to lean forward or reach beyond 500 millimeters, this reduces shoulder rotation, head movement, and distraction, especially in urban traffic where small actions happen constantly. When interactions become more natural and less distracting, the final factor that completes the daily experience in the Model Y Juniper is cabin cooling and temperature stability. Tesla did not choose the simple approach of increasing fan power, since stronger fans mean constant background noise. Instead, the Model Y Juniper uses a redesigned hidden vent architecture with elongated slots, optimized duct shapes, and revised airflow angles. This allows air to disperse more broadly before reaching occupants. The airflow no longer blows directly at the face or chest, but spreads evenly throughout the cabin, allowing temperature to balance more quickly. On top of this hardware foundation, the adaptive HVAC control algorithm was refined to increase airflow quickly during the initial phase, helping the cabin reach the target temperature about 1 to 2 minutes faster, then rapidly reducing fan speed to a stable medium level. This setting produces the lowest noise and is where the climate system operates for most real-world driving time. On a short test drive, these changes might feel subtle, but after daily use, one of them tends to matter far more than expected. Which one do you think that is? Comment: seat or layout or airflow. We're going one level deeper, because most people don't lose money on cars because they chose the wrong model. They lose money because they didn't see the timing change. Markets don't usually shift when a new product launches. They shift when resale data starts behaving differently. And right now, the resale data from one very common vehicle, the Tesla Model Y, is quietly signaling how the used car market is likely to behave over the next 3 years. If you plan to buy, sell, or hold a car in the next 24 to 36 months, the rules you've relied on may already be outdated. Here's why resale data matters. Between 2023 and late 2025, three-year-old Tesla Model Y vehicles consistently retained around 60 to 65% of original MSRP, even as new EV pricing fluctuated. At the same time, many similarly priced gas SUVs, including RAV4 and CR-V models, showed wider resale spreads depending on mileage, region, and timing. That gap isn't about brand loyalty, it's about predictability. When resale values cluster tightly, buyers feel safe. When they scatter, buyers hesitate. And hesitation is what moves markets before headlines ever do. That's why the Model Y isn't just a car in this story. It's a signal. That sounds abstract until you see what actually happened when one vehicle reached real scale. Let's make this personal, not theoretical. By late 2025, resale data across the US shows a very tight pattern for the Tesla Model Y, three-year-old vehicles. Average mileage around 35,000 to 45,000 miles. Resale values clustering around 60 to 65% of original MSRP. Now here's why that matters to you, not the market. Let's say a buyer purchased a Model Y at $52,000 in 2022 or early 2023. 3 years later, resale prices consistently land between $31,000 and $34,000, depending on region and condition. That's a loss, but it's a known loss. Now compare that to a common alternative your audience actually cross-shops. Take a 2019 to 2020 gas SUV originally priced around $35,000, bought used in 2023 for roughly $22,000. By the time that vehicle reaches 100,000 to 115,000 miles, which happens fast at US average driving rates, resale expectations shift. Listings don't collapse overnight, but buyers hesitate. And when buyers hesitate, sellers start negotiating earlier. Industry transaction data through 2024 to 2025 shows that once these vehicles cross that mileage window, resale outcomes often spread by $3,000 to $5,000 depending on timing, not condition. That spread is the risk. The Model Y's resale curve doesn't just sit higher, it sits narrower. And that difference matters more than people realize, because a narrow resale band means lenders stay comfortable, buyers don't panic, sellers don't race each other to the bottom. Here's the part most people miss. Resale data isn't measuring how good the car is. It's measuring how predictable the exit feels to the next buyer. And right now, the data says this very clearly. Buyers don't see a 3-year-old Model Y as a gamble. They see it as a known quantity. That perception alone is worth thousands of dollars when timing matters. And here's the part most people miss. Those numbers don't just reflect the car. They reflect how buyers feel about risk. Here's something buyers almost never say out loud, but their behavior proves it every time. They don't chase the vehicle that once had the highest resale value. They chase the vehicle that won't surprise them when it's time to sell. That's why, for decades, vehicles like the RAV4, CR-V, and Highlander became the gold standard in the US market. Not because they were exciting, but because their resale curves were boring. A 3-year-old RAV4 didn't just hold value, it held value within a narrow range. So did the CR-V. So did the Highlander. That narrow range mattered more than the headline number. Because a vehicle that sometimes sells for $32,000 but sometimes falls to $27,000 feels risky, even if the average looks fine. A vehicle that consistently lands between $29,000 and $31,000 feels safe. And in used markets, predictability is worth more than peak value. This is where the Model Y quietly changed the conversation. It's not being rewarded because it occasionally tops resale charts. It's being rewarded because, by 2024 to 2025, its resale behavior started to resemble the same boring patterns buyers associate with long-trusted gas SUVs: tight pricing clusters, small spreads between best-case and worst-case resale outcomes, fewer surprise drops once mileage and age are accounted for, That's not excitement. That's confidence. And confidence is exactly what lenders, insurers, and second-hand buyers price into the market, long before headlines catch up. So keep this distinction in mind as we move forward, because markets don't reset when something new looks better. They reset when something new starts behaving as predictably as what buyers already trust. Keep this in mind as we move forward, because this is where the market quietly resets its baseline. This didn't happen overnight. Between 2024 and late 2025, Tesla Model Y crossed a line that very few EVs had reached before. It stopped being an EV choice. It became a normal family vehicle. And that matters more than most people realize. Because when a vehicle becomes normal, the market stops treating it gently and starts treating it honestly. By late 2025, Model Y sales volume placed it consistently among the top-selling vehicles in the U.S. across all powertrains, according to Cox Automotive and Kelley Blue Book. At that scale, buyer psychology changes. Once a vehicle becomes normal, lenders price risk differently. Insurers stop padding uncertainty. Used buyers stop asking what-if questions. And that shift shows up first in resale data, not headlines. Decision trigger number 1. If lenders and insurers stop treating a vehicle as risky, ask yourself this: what happens to the cars they now compare it against? The most important signal in Model Y resale data isn't the headline retention percentage. It's what the market is no longer doing. By late 2025, used Model Y pricing data from Edmunds TMV and IC Cars shows buyers are no longer discounting for battery lifespan fear, EV-specific reliability risk, resale uncertainty beyond 3 to 5 years. That's a structural shift. EV ownership, at this scale, is no longer perceived as experimental. And once EVs become part of the baseline, every vehicle in the same price band gets reevaluated, not emotionally, mathematically. This is where timing starts doing real damage, not to bad cars, but to bad assumptions. Let's ground this in numbers buyers actually face. Model Y, used, real transactions, late 2025. Based on Edmunds TMV, CarGurus transaction data, and IC Cars resale studies. Model year 2022 to 2023. Mileage, 35,000 to 45,000 miles. Original MSRP, typical, approximately $52,000. Actual resale range, late 2025, $31,000 to $34,000. That's a loss, but it's a known loss. The spread between best case and worst case resale outcomes is typically $2,500 to $3,000 nationwide once mileage and trim are normalized. Now compare that to what many buyers in your audience actually cross-shop. Gas SUV alternative, RAV4/CRV/Highlander example. A common real-world scenario. Vehicle: 2019 to 2020 RAV4/CRV/Highlander. Original MSRP, approximately $34,000 to $38,000. Bought used in 2023, approximately $21,000 to $24,000. By late 2025, many of these vehicles approach mileage, 100,000 to 115,000 miles. Age, 8 to 10 years. Here's where the risk appears. According to IC Cars and Edmunds transaction data, 2024 to 2025, resale outcomes spread $3,000 to $5,000, depending not on condition, but timing. Days on market increase sharply past 100,000 miles. Price cuts accelerate after initial listing. The car didn't change. Buyer tolerance did. Decision trigger number 2. If two owners drove identical cars, but one sold at 95,000 miles and the other at 115,000, why does one lose $4,000 more without the car being worse? Buyers rarely say this out loud, but their behavior proves it every time. They don't want the car that once had the highest resale value. They want the car that won't surprise them when they sell. That's why, for decades, Toyota RAV4, Honda CR-V, Toyota Highlander became resale benchmarks. Not because they were exciting, but because their resale curves were boring. A 3-year-old RAV4 didn't just hold value. It held value within a narrow range. That narrow band mattered more than the peak. And here's the uncomfortable truth for the used gas market. By 2024 to 2025, Model Y resale behavior started looking boring in the same way. Tight pricing clusters, smaller spreads between best and worst outcomes, fewer surprise drops once mileage is accounted for. That's not hype. That's confidence being priced in. Decision trigger number 3. If predictability is what protected gas SUVs for 20 years, what happens when an EV earns that same trust? Markets don't flip. They reprice risk. Resale data through late 2025 suggests 3 things are likely to continue. 1. Timing will matter more than model vehicles that cross major breakpoints, 100,000 miles or 8 to 10 years, will feel pressure faster. Not because they're worse, but because buyers now have predictable alternatives. A resale window that used to feel safe for 2 to 3 years may now feel safe for 12 to 18 months. The margin for error is smaller. 2. Mid-price used segments. Feel it first. The pressure isn't at 10,000 beaters, and it's not at 70,000 luxury. It's at $18,000 to $28,000, where buyers expect reliability, low surprises, resale protection. That's exactly where Model Y resale data changes the comparison, not by being cheaper, but by being predictable. 3. Depreciation feels sudden, even when it isn't. When buyer risk tolerance changes, listings sit longer, negotiation leverage shifts, price cuts happen earlier. From the outside, it looks like something broke. In reality, the rules changed quietly months earlier. Decision trigger number 4. If depreciation feels sudden, is it really sudden? Or did you just miss the signal? This does not mean gas cars are obsolete. EVs are risk-free. Everyone should switch vehicles. Markets don't deal in absolute